Well, been a while since I made a straight up negative review, but I guess something had to break that streak. And if ever there was a big budget movie that deserved to take its place amongst the ranks with Moonfall and Crawlers, it would be Borderlands. Apparently, Eli Roth is a domestic terrorist, but instead of carrying out plots with guns or bombs, he assaults the American populace with completely dogshit movies. Now, honestly, since I heard about this movie when I was in high school nearly a decade ago, I did not have high hopes. I did not expect this to be good. Basically, every casting announcement for this film was just one big red flag after another. Cate Blanchett's leading as Lilith, maybe. Doesn't really match the vibe I understood, but she's a talented actress, so I suppose I can buy it. And then a nuclear bomb was dropped on any sort of plausibility this film had when they decided to cast Kevin Hart as Roland. I'm sorry, but this cannot be serious. If I told you I need someone to play a leading man, a straight shooter soldier archetype, and you said Kevin Hart, you would deservedly get laughed out of the room. Are you serious? The guy from every commercial ever in the last 5 years. The guy who only does movies when his buddy The Rock asks him to. The guy who has the acting range of an actual lamppost. Truly, almost everyone cast in this film was an utter travesty. If you told me that everyone on set was being held there at gunpoint as the cameras were rolling, I would believe you without a second thought. Cate Blanchett's tone as Lilith sounds like she's reading her lines while watching the clock, waiting for the day to end, begging the clock to strike 5 or whatever time they wrap for the day. The villain is about 2 scenes away from tying someone to railroad tracks and twirling his mustache nefariously as he runs off with a burlap sack labeled with a comically large $sign. Kevin Hart plays the only role he knows how to, which really isn't saying much of anything. And apparently the bodybuilder they got to play Krieg the Psycho was such a bad actor that they must have brought some other guy in to record his lines and added them as a voiceover. Genuinely, his lines sound like they were ripped directly from the game and then haphazardly edited into the final film. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say about that. Tina was passable, I guess, but is yet another victim of Eli Roth's writing, as she is given some atrocious lines. Multiple times, I felt genuine pity for this woman speaking the word vomit that was her dialogue.
Time to make it rain with your body parts.
She did not have a chance from the moment that script was printed. On the not entirely dogshit side of things, there's Jack Black as Claptrap. He actually kinda works decently well. Other than the backstory they forced onto Claptrap, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, until of course I heard the next thing to happen in this film, I thought he was the character that was executed the best. He was annoying to the other members of the cast and incessant about that, but it was done in a way that was mostly entertaining to us as viewers and outsiders. So that's pretty spot on to his role in the games, and I appreciated that. He gets most of the semi-passable comedic moments as well, and most of these moments aren't actually outright funny, but they're decent enough to give you the bare minimum level of amusement to keep you from outright walking out of the theater. So I suppose that's now my bar for praise for Borderlands. Also, oddly enough, Jamie Lee Curtis didn't feel terrible in this. You could tell she was, at the very least, attempting to play a character that she had thought out, which again is a very, very low bar, but I assure you the rest of the film comes nowhere close to clearing this bar, so it is worth calling out. And I think Jamie Lee Curtis had been pushing for this movie since it was just a rumor, and may actually be a fan of this franchise as a whole, so that possibly explains the decency of her performance here. I give her credit for making an effort. Her tanness felt genuine, at least on some level, and I feel like that deserves recognition. Outside of the characters themselves and within the world, the set design felt so monotonous. We spend about 80% of the movie in junkyards. These various junkyards are supposedly all over the planet of Pandora, but if you told me this was all just one large junkyard with 3 different zones, I would have believed that. There is just a stunning lack of visual variety in scenery. It feels like if in Star Wars they promised you this extravagant and bombastic galaxy of amazing vistas, but then they spent the entire movie on Tatooine and kept trying to convince you that this was a totally different sand dune than the one they were on 5 minutes ago. I mean, Dune has far more visual variety than Borderlands, much more creativity and aesthetic vision as well. And that was taking place entirely on an actual desert planet. On top of that, the CGI was just really, really rough at times. Maybe they burnt all their budget on appeasing to Eli Roth's ego and ruining what was by all accounts a great original script from Craig Mazin of Chernobyl fame, because this and some of the scenery just combined to make things feel cheap and plastic and artificial. But again, what more should I expect from Eli Roth, who is apparently the Saddam of the screenplay?
I want people to go, that is the best time I've had in a movie theater in years.
And this is a shame because the actual props and set design felt really detailed in isolation. I didn't feel like the movie was taking place in front of an obvious green screen for the most part. Things were there, they were palpable, they were just super muted and bland and completely uninteresting after the fifth rusted roof or tin metal sheet. For example, they go to this place called Caustic Caverns. In the game, this is a sprawling underground crystal cave. It is a huge location with glowing green lakes and streams of toxic acids flowing throughout. It's actually one of my favorite areas in the game, save for the annoying Varkids, which scare the shit out of me when they evolve. Suffice to say, this would be incredibly visually interesting and unique and create a lot of dynamic set piece opportunities. So naturally, the decision was made to turn Caustic Caverns into a sewer. Yes, a literal actual sewer. But rather than, anything actually interesting about the setting, they made it so that the water is neon green instead of dirty brown. Thrilling. And really, this embodies the main issue of Borderlands as a film. It feels afraid to be anything or commit to something. It tells you it's zany and wants to be seen as crazy, but it's utterly terrified of doing anything remotely interesting, both visually and narratively. The adaptation of a video game with acid guns that melt people and shotguns that reduce enemies to skeletons has not so much as a drop of blood through its runtime. And by the way, this is with Krieg the Psycho as a main character, who is mauling the bad guys with a buzzsaw axe that can cut through metal in a single swing. The actors feel almost afraid to step into the absurdity that the Borderlands franchise demands throughout its runtime. And I honestly don't blame them for this. When you have a script this generic and cowardly, why would you want to even entertain the idea of leaning into campiness on behalf of this generic, muddled, unfun script? You've been given absolutely nothing to work with, so why bother embarrassing yourself for absolutely no return? They are there for the paycheck because there's nothing else to be there for. And I know I'm being a huge hater, but I feel like I'm coming with receipts aplenty. There are so many ways in which this adaptation could have been more faithful to the games it was adapting, and done so in a way that would have actually enhanced the film as a whole. Things that could add to the story, give the characters actual journeys and arcs, and make things actually entertaining for the audience. My qualifications for being delusional enough to believe this are that I played Borderlands incessantly back in the day. I'm talking soloing the raid bosses, optimizing all of my builds, running the campaign a countless number of times just to get more chances at legendary weapons and rare drops. I was farming for hours on end for some stupid shield that boosts your damage like crazy when you're at max health. When it comes to Borderlands, I have a doctorate in being a total loser, and unfortunately for me, I know my stuff, so I know what this movie was actually capable of. I know that they could have introduced Lilith by having her do something insane to set the tone. Maybe to get a ride to the place she needs to go, she needs to shoot Face McShooty, a real character from the games, in order to find Tina. Maybe Claptrap and her argue about the ethics of this murder when it's being requested. It's stupid and ridiculous and absurd, but that's what Borderlands is. This sort of idiotic, upside-down, over-the-top stuff is what lets the franchise shine. Maybe let the villain lean into the handsome Jack camp and cartoon vileness rather than just be some greedy corporate stooge they plucked from a 2013 dystopia film. Let our characters use some of the zany guns that the franchise offers the players in the games, and let them react to using these guns. They freak out, but then they lean into it. They ham it up as they're shooting bullets made of acid and electricity. Yet they're also horrified as their weapons mutilate the bandits of Pandora that they're up against. Maybe Kevin Hart could have actually had a chance in the lead role as Roland, the resident straight man of the group, if he had anything to be straight off of. Everyone in this movie is equally boring, so there's no novelty to be had from Kevin Hart's unusual positioning here. And maybe, crazy idea, but maybe let each character have an action moment that highlights their special skills and abilities. This is a humongous part of the game. Roland's tactical mind, Lilith's siren powers that we only introduce at the very end of the movie, Krieg's rampaging, which just really isn't there at all. Create some dynamic visuals and choreography rather than just another still shot watching them all shoot the same 3 rifles and pistols for 2 of the longest hours of my life. Christ. This is all stuff that could have added flavor to the film without really altering the plot considerably. But that would require actually wanting to make something interesting and maybe having something to say. Maybe doing this could have helped create a genuine found family sort of dynamic where everyone bands together for Tina, who is a girl hunted across this entire shithole planet. But it's impossible to care about anything in this movie that was just so carelessly and lazily envisioned by its driving force. So there's my review. This is a movie that tries at nothing and as a result fails at everything. everything. It never wanted to be something, so it amounts to a hollow emptiness. There was tons of potential here, but I guess certain people didn't care enough to dig for it. You should have leaned into the fact that everything and everyone in this film should have been dialed up to 11 on Pandora, and then roll with that. Commit to the bit. Don't be a coward, and don't be afraid to inhabit the property you agreed to adapt in the first place. Overall, I thought Borderlands was a 1 out of 5 stars. There's no real redeeming qualities, and frankly, it's not even so bad that it's good. It's just the boring kind of bad. It's full of exposition and useless flashbacks and information dumping at a moment's notice because they forgot to set things up earlier, and just bland, blah nothingness. This is not a film where a Face McShooty could have ever existed, and to me, that's a succinct way of saying everything that was wrong with Borderlands. And also, Borderlands? More like, Borderlands. Yeah. Until next time.